Okay, Gabby, over to you. So ready when you are.
All right, everybody. So, first of all, I am so excited to be back. I know if you couldn't tell, I'm so excited to be back here. Welcome, everyone to the No Long Ting because we do not waste time when it comes to education and Web3 and technology around the world. Bootcamp 2025. And guys, can you believe it? You're almost on the home stretch, okay? So if you are excited, if you have learned something new, let me see you put yes in the chat, okay? So let me see YES in the chat if you've learned something new, you're enjoying your journey, your educational horizons have been broadened over the past week and some. Let's do a quick little shout out to who's saying yes. All right, so Shanika, hi girl. She says yes. Sharono, fifth work Nino, Evan, Mugata, Ultron Smith is saying yes. Of course, Blockchain Let's Group is in the building. They're saying yes as well because come on, it's never too late to learn something new. All right. Ian Constantine, yes. Paul Mac Okala says yes. Let's do two more. So Hafsa and Bruce Kiprono are saying yes. And that's the attitude here, right? Because remember, this is what No Long Team Bootcamp is about. It's about educating you and introducing you to all things Web3, all things crypto, just to give you that education and that base knowledge that you need. So, speaking of a base knowledge, who remembers when it came first day and we were talking about Paris? Put Paris in the chat if you remember that. Let's see who remembers what that was about. So, who remembers what's going on with Paris, what's going on with us here? And while you guys are getting that started, the reason that I spoke about Paris on the first day, because Paris has something to do with XRPL comments. Yes, Paris. Okay, Tricia, you've got it. Paris residency, Shanika, Winnie, John, Kinua. Yeah, you guys are on point, right? So, yes, Paris and the residency with a Ripple comments. So, what we're going to be doing today, you guys, is that I know you see coding, but don't get too scared because Ripple comments are going to hold your hand today throughout this workshop, and we're going to get our hands dirty. Now, the reason that we want you guys to be immersed into learning about coding and whatnot is because at NLT, it's about giving you opportunity. So, there's a popular saying that says, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat one day, but if you teach him to fish, all right, he will eat for a lifetime. And that is what's happening with Ripple Commons and the Paris residency. So when you learn these skills, you do the ideathon, right, with Nino and Fifth Work. So remember, guys, he gave you the criteria. He gave you all the necessary instructions for the ideathon. When you do that, you then become eligible to win a right? We're not saying we can't guarantee, but we're giving you the opportunity to be eligible for a residency in Paris. Oui, oui, France. Paris. Okay? To bring your ideas to life. Tell me, where are you finding that anywhere else? Exactly. Exactly. So, without further ado, let me introduce Chris Dangerfield, all right? And Dr. Vera Verdeva, and they're going to take us through about this opportunity, coding, and how to get your hands dirty. So, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to put some claps in the chat, some clap emojis, and put the word welcome to Chris and Ripple Commons. Take it away, Chris.
Thanks, Gabby.
Brilliant. Well, that's quite an intro. Thank you. Okay, right. I'm just going to start my slide share then. Can you now see XRP Ledger fundamentals on your screen?
Yeah, Chris.
Okay, right. Let's let's get cracking then. Well, first of all, thank you again for having me back for a second bite. Hopefully, you've either watched the first lecture I did live, or you've now caught up with it on YouTube. We spent a lot of time in the first lecture looking at theory. Unfortunately, that's a necessary reality when you're building blockchain. If you don't understand the features that you have available to you and how they work, it doesn't matter how good a coder you are, you're going to find yourself struggling because you must understand what it is you are building on. The good news, though, is that we got through the vast majority of what we needed to. So tonight we're going to be doing stuff that's a little bit more fun. We're going to finish off the last part of the lecture that we didn't get to complete last time because we ran over on time. And then we're going to jump in and do some code. Now, all I'll say is if you are not a coder, don't get scared when I start coding. And if you are, you genuinely should have no problem following along. We're not going to do anything that's overly taxing tonight. And I've stood up a GitHub repo with all of the code examples we're going to go through. So I'll provide those to everybody at the end. And if you want to go through and have that code and have a bit of a look at it and a play around in your own time, then I would absolutely encourage you to jump in and just have a go. So well done for sticking with me and the first section. And everything you've learned is going to start to pay dividends throughout your journey into the XRPL. There is a lot more to learn, but at least you've now got a solid foundation that you can build on. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the XRP ledger. And what I'm going to do to start is something a bit more visual. Tell me, can you see a black screen now with a whole bunch of strange colored dots and things all over it?
Yep.
Yep. Right. Great. Excellent. So this is the XRP Ledger Block Explorer. Okay. So basically what it is a visual representation of the XRP ledger in real time. So as the blocks are closing, you can see what's in each block and you can actually dig into that in greater detail and really have a good look at it. So one thing you might notice is that it's moving quite quickly. And as I said in the last lecture, the XRP ledger is fast. It's one of the key selling points of the XRPL is it doesn't take minutes or even hours in the case of other blockchains to actually create a block. The XRP ledger creates a new one every 3 to 5 seconds. So you get transaction finality within 5 seconds at a max. And what you're witnessing now is essentially the main live net. So site's packed with information, and I'm going to break it all down for you now. And I'm expecting that a few things as I will start to click into place for you once you start to see them explained more visually now, talking specifically about what we actually learned in the last lecture. So in the top left corner, can you see my mouse moving around this screen as well?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So in the top left, we've got this network switcher. We're currently looking at the main net, but we can use a drop down and switch to other networks, and I'll come back to that later. We've also got a search bar, which is allowing us to search for transactions or things like that. You're going to do that quite a lot as you start to dig into the XRPL. You're going to want to see some transactions you've done. You just drop the transaction hash in there and off you pop, find it. You got this pause and resume button, which is it's actually not very useful for the majority of the time, but it's actually going to be quite useful for me now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video. So that paused there. And so now I can actually see what's actually happened inside all these blocks. So we're going to that in a moment. So, there are a few interesting headline facts as well, which is these do change. So average transaction fee, the average time for a ledger close, stuff like that. All interesting stats. But what I really wanted to sort of dig into is the block representation. So each ledger contains several pieces of information, and we're going to look at a ledger in more detail now. So you have a ledger sequence number, which is this number here. We often refer to that as the ledger index. Each new ledger results in a new sequence number that's exactly one higher than the previous. So if you look at these numbers, they're always going ascending. And basically all the index number does is just helps you identify the ledger, the ledger's position in the chain. We can also see close time here. At this stage of your learning, all you really need to know is that the ledger guarantees that close times are validated, and they're always strictly increasing. So the time will always be increasing ledger after ledger after ledger. And we'll investigate close times as you sort of like start to dig deeper into ledger structure. We see a transaction count. These numbers here are the number of transactions that occurred in every single ledger. So essentially in that one there, 173 different transactions occurred within that 3 to 5 second window. Right, what else we can see? The first 6 characters of the ledger's hash. And obviously we get a green tick here as well, which just lets us know that the ledger was validated. Okay. Finally, we've got a section centered around like validators here. Okay. And so if you hover over them, you can actually see the actual validators themselves that came to consensus. The ones that are slightly lighter grey are actually the UNL validators, and the ones that are grey are just other operators that run their own, essentially their own nodes and their own validators. All of this information I'm showing you is actually pulled from the ledger. It's all totally transparent. Anyone can see it. This is a public site, but ultimately it's been driven from the public ledger itself. So you could technically get all of this data yourself in code if you wanted to look at any of this kind of information. So the next thing I'm going to do is just examine one of the actual ledgers, and we'll pick this one here because it's nice and big. So basically what we're going to do is take a little look at all these different shapes and colors, because they do sort of mean something, right? So you've got things like DEX offers, payments, account functions, and all that kind of stuff that's showing up in this like representation, visual representation. And it actually makes it much easier to see and understand what the XRP ledger is actually doing when you look at it in this kind of visual way. And it will make a whole lot more sense in a minute when I show you essentially the legend, which breaks down all of these different types. So if we look at the color codes, anything that's green is a kind of payment. Anything that's blue is something like an AMM offer or a DEX offer or something like something to do with tokens. Purple are related to NFT transactions. The sort of like purpley, well, the pinky red color are account-based transactions, and then pseudo transactions you won't see all that often. But then you can take each of these colors and compare it with a shape, and they all mean different things. Now, green payments will always look like that because they only really have one state, which is send. But if you take a look at, for example, let's find a good one here, the blue ones. So you've got an offer create, which is the circle create, and you've got an offer cancel, which is sort of like almost the circle with the slash through it. It would be nice if there was a solid blue one, but I haven't got one. So what I'll do is I'll unpause this now and resume. This goes back to live, and these are all things coming in live now. So you've got an account, hit delete there. So somebody's actually deleted their XRPL account. You've got somebody that's got a ticket creation, something I talked about last week. We've got NFT create offer, a purple with a create circle. You've got a cancel for an NFT. So essentially, if you are able to look at this representation and compare it with the shapes, that is going to enable you to have a proper live understanding of what's going on right now on the XRPL. It's the kind of thing that you should definitely go to this website, which is livenet.xrpl.org, and you should have a little look at this in your own time, have a play around with it, and try and sort of like break down all the individual parts of the page that I've shown you, and have a little look yourself. The last thing I want to do is I want to go back to the network switcher, because this is actually quite an important thing. The network switcher is currently on the main net, which is basically we're now looking at the live main net. But if we change this, we can go and look at the test net. Now, the test net, essentially, the best way for anyone to think of the test net, and if you're a dev, you'll kind of get this, is just think of it like your reference environment. Okay, it's basically the live net, but it's just not real data. So none of the XRP or none of the transactions on the test net are real. The other thing is that there are also a bunch of other networks that you can connect to. The DevNet is actually used for testing future features. So, before amendments are pushed live, and I talked about amendments last week, but essentially amendments are the mechanism that the XRPL uses to update itself and give itself new features. So there will be a new feature coming to the XRPL at some point in the near future, and it won't be live today, but you will be able to go and see and play around with it. And importantly, you can write code and connect to the DevNet and try it out. And if you wanted to actually go and see your transaction, you could go to the DevNet and see that happening. So the idea is the developers basically can go on, you can test it, you can break it, and you can send feedback, and all of this happens before the feature actually gets added to the main code base. The common thing that it shares with the testnet, though, is that its state is temporary. The assets on it have no value. When there's a big amendment in the pipeline, sometimes we do see test networks spun up specifically for testing a specific amendment, and the Zahao testnet is a good example of that. So the Zahao network was a major code change, and it resulted actually in essentially another network being stood up. But that was stood up so you can go and test that in isolation again. And it's always important that you recognize the difference between testnets and mainnet. So if you're testing on Zahao, you would use this one. If you go to Zahao mainnet, that's a live network. And doing things on a live network means you're playing with real transactions and real value. So take a few moments when you come back to this site, have a look at this, switch between them. You can't do any harm just by looking at this site and looking at all the different types of features you've got. Again, we talked a little bit about side chains. The Zahao mainnet is essentially a side chain. I'm not going to go into any detail about that now, but it's definitely something that you'd be worthwhile taking a look into, because it does have additional features which the XRPL doesn't currently have. So we're on the testnet, and what you should see instantly by looking at this is there's a pretty obvious difference in volume, right? So these are developers right now live that are actually testing things on the testnet right now. So you'll get many blocks that are empty because somebody's running some kind of piece of code, like someone's just run a test payment there. So what I can do is I can pause it, or we'll take this one. So we've just had a payment, and we've just had a offer create. So these are happening on the testnet right now. So to anyone that says, that nobody builds on the XRPL, just send them here, because you can see there are people actually using it right now live on the testnet. And so that really is it. I don't want to spend too much time on here. I actually think you'll get a lot more value if you go and explore this yourself. It's an interesting place to be. So make a note of the address. You can go to LiveNet or TestNet, both on xrpl.org, and you can always find it via the xrpl.org website. Now, one thing I didn't do at the beginning was show you our sort of course outline. So these are all the things we got through in the first section. We've now been through this one as well. So account basics essentially is where we're going to go to next. And what I'm going to do is show you a quick video that I've already done for my Udemy course, because this is going to get across what you really need to know in the fastest possible time. If I attempt to explain this to you, it'll take longer. So this is going to be a very fast, very succinct video, and you'll understand after you've watched it why it's important that you understand about accounts, because unlike with Ethereum and other blockchains, the account in the XRPL is actually super important at a much lower level. There's some really important things about accounts that you really need to understand. So I'm going to jump to that, and hopefully just give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound on it. You should be able to, and I'll come back when this is finished.
Yeah, the sound is there.
In this lecture, we're going to look at accounts in more detail, because as a general rule, everything on the XRP ledger revolves around them. For a start, in order to submit a transaction to the ledger, you need to sign it. And what do we sign it with? An account's private key. Also, in the majority of cases, a transaction will have an effect on an account. Whether it's a payment that changes the balance of two accounts, or creating a trust line to the issuer of an asset you want to hold, accounts are central. In section 4, we learned a few basic concepts of accounts, but it's time to delve a little deeper now with a bit of theory, before we get practical and create some. An account on the XRP ledger represents a holder of XRP and the sender of transactions. Remember, transactions are not just payments. An account consists of an address, a cryptographic key pair, an XRP balance, a sequence number, a history of transactions, and a list of objects that it owns. Every account has a public address, known as the R address. This is sometimes referred to as a classic address. That's because in 2018, a new address format was introduced called the X address. An X address packs a destination tag into the address, which makes them super useful for exchanges. But since we haven't really touched on destination tags yet, we'll skip over X addresses and come back to them later in the course. The R address is 25 to 35 characters in length, and it's case sensitive. It starts with a lowercase r, which is where the name comes from. It's a combination of alphanumeric characters and excludes the number 0, the uppercase O, the uppercase I, and the lowercase l. Each address includes a 4-byte checksum, which acts as a built-in error-checking mechanism. This feature reduces the likelihood of mistakes when referencing an account in a transaction. As a challenge to yourself at some future point, connect to the testnet and send a payment, but change one character of the destination and see what happens. The 4-byte checksum means you have a 1 in 2 to the power of 32 chance of actually changing a character that would yield a valid address. That's about a 1 in 4.3 billion chance. So have a go and see what you get back. The last thing to say is that an R address is derived from the account master key pair, which leads us to our next topic. An account must have one or more ways to authorize transactions. And there are 3 methods available: a master key pair, a regular key pair, or a signer list. This topic is deserving of its own lecture, so for now all I intend to cover is the essentials. Every transaction needs to be signed before it can be submitted to the ledger, and only valid signatures will be accepted and included in a validated ledger. Once you've constructed the transaction, you need to sign it. To do this, you use the cryptographic key pair associated with the transaction sending account. For now, we'll only consider the use of the master key pair, but before we do, this is an obvious time to approach one of the most important lessons, which is the importance of security. I will now read verbatim from the xrpl.org technical documentation page on the topic of cryptographic keys. It is important to maintain proper security over your cryptographic keys. Digital signatures are the only way of authorizing transactions in the XRP ledger, and there is no privileged administrator who can undo or reverse any transactions after they have been applied. If someone else knows the seed or private key of your XRP Ledger account, that person can create digital signatures to authorize any transaction the same as you could. Okay, with that out of the way, let's discuss transaction signing using the master key pair. The master key pair consists of a public key and a private key. The master public key is used to derive the R address, and it's publicly shareable. The master private key is used for signing transactions. It's highly sensitive and should be kept secure. Before signing a transaction, you need to create the transaction. This includes specifying the transaction type, account associated with the master key pair, a sequence number, and fee, plus any additional required information depending on the transaction type. The transaction details are serialized into a specific format. This is where the master private key comes into play. Using the master private key, you generate a cryptographic signature for the serialized transaction data. This signature is unique to the transaction and proves that the transaction was authorized by the account holder. The generated signature is included in the transaction details. It's essentially an additional piece of data attached to the transaction. With the transaction details, including the signature, you can now submit the transaction to the XRP ledger. The XRP ledger will validate the signature using the master public key associated with the sender's account. If the signature is valid, the transaction is accepted and you will get a success response. Importantly, the success message you received is not enough to consider the transaction final. Once your valid and signed transaction is accepted, it goes through the consensus process. Remember when we learned about the different states of a ledger? When you received your response, the ledger was likely open, but we're waiting for your transaction to be included in a closed ledger and then for the ledger to return validated. So to be sure the transaction was a true success, you need to check that the transaction was validated before acting upon it. For example, showing the user a payment success message. In the early days of the ledger, you would have had to wait and then call a separate function to do this check. But luckily, in the JavaScript SDK, we have a method we can use called submit and wait, which is a promise-based function that returns once the transaction has been validated. Now we understand addressing, keys, and how to use them, let's talk about getting an account. The process of getting an account can be broken down into two parts: generation of the master key pair and funding of the account. I have previously alluded to the fact that there is no create account transaction on the XRP ledger. The act of funding an account via a transaction is the mechanism by which an account is actually created on the XRP ledger. But to fund an account, it needs an address to receive the funds, right? So how do we get the address? Well, we generate a master key pair and use it to derive the R address. Once we have the address, we can send funds to it from some other activated account. To activate the account, you must receive enough XRP to meet the account reserve. We'll discuss reserves in more detail later, but for now the key takeaways are: for an account to be activated and remain usable, it must receive and maintain a balance greater than the current reserve, which at the time of writing is 10 XRP. Reserves play a vital role in protecting the XRP ledger against spam or malicious usage. The reserves cannot be used, but you can recover part of the reserve by deleting the account, a topic we'll also look at in a future lecture. Let's get back to creating an account. We need to generate the master key pair, derive the R address, then send some XRP to it to activate it. And we'll do all of this in code in a later lecture. What I've just described accurately explains the process for the mainnet. But for the testnet, we have a much easier option for creating an account. We have a testnet faucet. If you're not familiar with that term, basically it's a website that we can go to which will generate us a master key pair, derive the address for us, fund it by sending it 10,000 XRP, and then deliver us a seed and our address. In the next lecture, we'll use the faucet to get our first account, and then we'll generate some additional accounts and derive their R addresses using code. Then we'll fund them. So I'll see you in the next lecture.
Right. Okay. So that was a lot of information in a relatively short amount of time, but the video is recorded. I would absolutely recommend you go back and rewatch that part of the video if any of it was a bit unclear. Accounts are really an important topic when it comes to the XRP ledger. Now, it would be great for me to just play the next video in the series, but you didn't realistically come to just watch me play videos. So what I'm going to do now is what I promised at the end of that last video, and I'm going to basically do this for you now live. So I'm going to change screens in a moment. So let me just turn that off and then I can switch. Okay, so you've learned what an R address is. You know it's 25 to 35 alphanumeric characters in length. You know it's case sensitive and it excludes the uppercase O, I, and lowercase L. And it's always going to start with an R, which hence why we call it the R address. Those are like the key takeaways. The R address is the public address that represents the account on the XRP ledger, but the creation of an account is not performed by the XRP ledger. Now, if you're a developer in most traditional applications, you'd expect to call some function, pass in some data, and then be returned an account. In the XRPL, that's not how it works. So there's two parts to generating the account. The first is to generate an account secret. This is strictly a mathematical process. You know, it can be performed offline. You don't need a connection to the XRP ledger, and you don't even need a connection to the internet. Once we have the secret, which is another address which starts with an S, we can then derive the R address, which is something the video explained. Now, the second step is to now send XRP to the newly created account's R address using a payment transaction. When the XRP ledger processes the payment, it attempts to assign the payment to the destination account, but in the case of a new account, it doesn't exist. So the XRP ledger creates a new account object on the ledger, and then it assigns the payment to its balance. For the account to become active, it must receive and maintain a balance greater than the base reserve fee. In the video, it said that reserve is 10, which was true when I created the video. The account reserve on the XRP ledger is currently 1 XRP now. So there are two more things that we need to go over. So the first is the testnet faucet, which the video talked about, because if you want to do anything on the XRPL, you're going to need an account and you're going to need some XRP to play with. And the other thing I'm going to show you is how to do it with code. In reality, you know, like I say, I could have just played the video, but I'm going to try and do that all for you now. So I have here the testnet faucet. The testnet faucet is essentially provided by the xrpl.org website. And in order for an account to become active, we're going to need to activate it. So if we were to create an account mathematically, it would still not really be of much use to us because we don't actually have any XRP to activate it. So we're going to create an account using the faucet. And this is something that you are all going to need to do at some point if you decide to write some code to interact. This is going to give us 100 XRP. In the video, it said 10,000. That number has now been dropped to 100 XRP. Sadly, the XRP are on the testnet, so they have got no intrinsic value. But at least we'll have some XRP that we can use to activate a bunch of new wallets programmatically, which we'll do in a minute. So in order to generate an account, we're going to click the generate button. And we need to make sure that we are on the testnet. Now, when we click this button, behind the scenes, this website has essentially done everything which I've described that you would do in code, and essentially it has funded the account with 100 XRP, and it's given you all the information that you're going to need to know. Now, one other thing that we can go and do very quickly is if we want to go to Ledger Explorer, and if we just grab the R address, we can go in here, search for it, and you can see now, what did I just do? Oh, I know it. Right, this is, I've made a mistake, but actually it's a brilliant mistake to have made, because this is showing no balance of XRP. Okay, so I've just created my credentials, and it tells me I've got 100 XRP, and I've gone to the Ledger Explorer, which is where I told you all to go and have a look and have a play around. Using the chat, can anybody tell me what I've done wrong? I'd be interested to know at this point whether anyone has picked it up.
I know the answer, but I can't say it. I'm gonna let the student do it.
Okay, well, let's see if anybody gets it right. But essentially what I've done is I've created it on the test net and I've viewed it on the main net. Now, it's brilliant because what's actually happened is the code behind the scenes has created all the account for me, and I've gone and viewed it, and there is no account there because it never received the payment. If I switch to the test net now, and then I search for that account again, voila, we now have 100 XRP balance. So that was a totally accidental thing to do, but actually was a really interesting thing for you to have actually seen. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to leave the window open, and we're going to come back to it later because we're going to want to copy these, these things down. And we're going to use these as essentially our accounts as we start to do some of this stuff in code. Now, I'm going to say one final time, I hope by now that you have picked this up, but it is absolutely vital that you keep your private keys and your secret keys stored securely. So if you ever create an account and you intend to use it on the mainnet and store real value on it, you must immediately take action to store the secrets in some kind of secure method. And this here, this one that starts with a lowercase s, this is the magic source. If somebody gets hold of that, you can pretty much say you've lost everything that's on the account. This one, the R address, begins with a lowercase r. This is the one you can publicly share with everybody. There's no risk in sharing that, but you absolutely must understand the difference between the two and when you should use them. So I'm going to leave the window open for now, and then I'm going to look to essentially do this in code. So I'm going to have to just stop the screen share and change the window. So I'm going to get this to jump now to Visual Code. Assuming you can all see that now. Right, so okay, so in this folder, I've got the Hello World code that we did last time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to spin up another folder so we can generate a wallet. And then I'm going to initialize it with Git. I'm going to do npm init. And I'm initializing for ES6. And I'm just going to open up another. Oh, okay, that didn't work because it's opened up a new. Right. Stop sharing. Close that down and reshare the new window. let's see. I'm going to quickly just create myself a file. Is that text readable for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Just got to turn my speaker back up a little bit. Okay, fine. So we can get rid of that now. Right. So one thing I'm going to obviously need to do, and which you will all obviously need to do, is we need to get the JavaScript SDK. So it's just npm i xrpl. So now we've got the SDK installed, we can start writing some code. So what I'm going to do is, for simplicity, I'm just going to create myself a text file, and I'm going to go and grab the R address, and I'm going to grab the secret off the window that we had open before. Save that. We'll come back to that later. Okay, so let's just clarify exactly what it is that we're about to do. We are going to generate an account mathematically using the SDK. This is the part that's basically going to essentially give us what the first part of what the faucet gave us. Okay, so here we go. We'll import wallet from XRPL. And let's see, we're going to want to wallet, have a function which we're going to call generate wallet. Okay, and then at the end of it, I'm just going to console log. And what I want to do is I want to put the entire wallet onto the console. So we're going to create the function. So generate wallet. I'm going to use an arrow. And it's relatively straightforward what we're going to do. I'm just going to do const new wallet equals wallet, which is actually the wallet is actually the one of the classes on the actual SDK, and .generate is the function we're going to call. And then all I'm going to do is return new wallet. Now, bearing in mind it's live, we will try it and see what happens. So let's just do node and fingers crossed. Okay, well, that worked. So let's have a look what we got. So what we've got now basically is we've got a public key and a private key. That's the one we would never share. And we've got a classic address, which is the R address. And we've got the seed. Okay. What I want to do now is show you how you would go about deriving the R address using code. So under here, I'm going to just do const. We'll just call it R address. And I'm just going to call another function called derive address. I'm going to pass it wallet.seed. And then I want to console log the R address out. So the goal is that when we run this a second time, we'll see the wallet. We're gonna pass in the wallet.seed, and using that, this new function is going to essentially give us back the R address. And so when this runs, we should see the wallet object, and then we should see the R address printed directly under, and they should match each other. So let's create the derive function. So I'm often amazed by how good AI is getting now. It's actually second guessing almost everything I need to do. So it knows that it's going to be looking to accept the seed. So I'll just call it, I'll leave it a seed. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do const new wallet equals wallet dot derive address. Actually, no, I want to derive wallet, don't I? And I'm going to make sure I pass in the seed. Also, a warning for anybody that decides to use A, you have to always be certain and check it, because often it does make mistakes. And then lastly, we're going to return the new wallet.classic address. So when this runs, it's gonna put the return value into the console log it. We're passing in the seed. The seed function is then going to derive the wallet from that seed, and then we're returning the R address. So if I save this and I rerun the code, let's just clear and rerun the code again. Now, if we look at the last few characters, should be the same. Okay, and that's it. So that worked quite nicely. Let's get my video screen back on and stop sharing for a moment. Okay, so what we've done now is we have essentially done the mathematical part of the equation. So we created essentially a new account, and we now have a real account that's currently unactivated. So what I'm going to quickly do, I'm going to have to turn the video off now. What I'm going to quickly do is I'm just going to drag out the wallet information and paste it into that keys folder that we had earlier. And you'll see why in a moment. Okay. And now it's time to essentially fund the account. So you've learned the theory, account is only activated once it's been funded. So we're going to now do that with code, and we're going to basically do it by sending a payment from one XRPL account to another on the testnet. So we're not spending any real XRP. This is one of the most fundamental actions that you're going to ever take on the XRP ledger. We're going to walk through creating a payment transaction object, converting the XRP to drops, auto-filling the transaction fields like fee and the sequence number, signing the transaction with the sender's wallet, and then submitting it to the network and waiting for the confirmation. This exercise is all about understanding how the payments work under the hood on the XRPL and seeing how easy it is to move XRP between accounts once you know the steps. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly spin up a new, I'm going to create a new folder. Called fund account. Jump into it, and then I'm going to initialize Git, initialize npm as ES6, and basically all I'm doing right now is essentially what I did the last time. I'll do npm I and bring in the SDK as well, and then I'm just going to launch a new version or a new instance of VS Code. Now I can share that window with you. Okie dokie. So let's just try and make this a little bit bigger. Let's create another file. So I'm going to go through this example, and then we'll stop, and then we'll have a few questions, And then I've got an interesting coding challenge, which we'll sort of run through if we can, if there's time at the end. So what are we going to do here? Start by importing some stuff from the SDK. So I know I'm going to need the client, and I know I'm going to need the wallet. And I know I'm also going to need XRP to drops, which is basically a helper method that the XRPL SDK, JavaScript SDK has, and it's actually really, really useful to have. So what do? We need to get essentially the wallet. So it's guessing what I want to do again. Okay. So wallet is essentially the wallet that we're going to be sending from. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the previous faucet page, and I'm going to get the S address that I pasted into the keys folder, and I'm going to pop that in there. And effectively, what we're going to do is essentially we're going to create a wallet now using the seed. Next thing we're going to want to do is essentially create a new client connection. We did this in the very first lecture at the very beginning. And I remember at the time I said to you, because I tell everybody this, what you learned in that first 10 minutes of the first lecture is going to be a really good base for you, because almost every time you interact with the ledger, you're always going to do the same things. You're always going to import the SDK. You're always going to connect to the ledger. You're always going to have to create a transaction, sign it, send it, and close a connection off. So that looks correct to me. So I'm going to call that, yeah, client, that's fine. So new client. We're connecting to the testnet, which is good. And so the next thing I'm going to do is await client.connect. If you remember the last video, you should see all of this is looking very familiar now. So I can't help but to do things properly. So I am going to try catch. And I'm also, I think what I'll do is I'll also use a finally block. And I know that I'm going to need to close off my disconnect the account. I won't bother console logging that though. So that will do. So I know that now I've got my client open, and I'm definitely going to close it at the very end. And while I'm here, I will just, I will catch the errors. Not that I expect any, but you never know. Right, so let's get to the meat of the actual the transaction in the try block itself. So what's the first thing that we're going to need to do is create a payment object. You're always going to need to do this when sending a payment. Then you're going to need to prepare the transaction. Then what we do? We're going to need to sign the transaction, and then submit it. And we should say and wait, because that's quite important also. So let's do const payment. So we're just creating a standard object. So we're going to do transaction type. Yes, thank you very much. We are going to do a payment. The account. If you remember when we were talking about this, the very earlier stages of the course last time, I was basically saying that there were certain fields that are mandatory and certain fields that are optional. So all we're doing right now is the option is the mandatory fields that we need. So remember, we've got the wallet. We essentially obtained it from the seed, and now we're using that wallet to extract the R address. And this is the R address of the send. This is essentially the sending account, and we know that this has got XRP because this is the account that we created on the faucet. So there's 100 XRP on there. I'm gonna say I want to send an amount. So I know that I have to send a minimum of 10, sorry, a minimum of 1 XRP now to activate the account. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to send, let's send 20. Okay, but I have to do, this is important now. When you're sending a payment on the XRPL, you don't send it derived as XRP, you send it as drops. So I explained previously that each XRP is divisible by up to 6 decimals. So 1 million drops is equivalent to 1 XRP. And weirdly, when we send an amount, we have to send it as a string. So if you want to send 20 XRP now, you've got to essentially add 6 zeros to it, and then you've got to turn it into a string. Luckily for us, the SDK has a brilliant function which will just do it all for us, which XRP to drops, and then we can just pass in 20 XRP, and that will take care of it for us. And then the last thing we need to do is set a destination. And so what I have to do now is go back and I need to get the R address that I created in the previous thing. So I'm just going to have to quickly run and get that. So here we go. So this is the address that we generated. If you remember, I do remember it ending SXM. Or yeah, so that's the right address that we want to send to. So that's probably the most complicated part. You've now created a valid payment object. The next thing to do is essentially prepare the transaction. So we're just going to do const prepared, and then we are going to await client.autofill and pass in the payment object. This here is brilliant. I explained again, when you send payments from an account, you have to have sequence numbers and a whole bunch of rules. The autofill function just does it all for you. So I recommend you do dig in and understand what is happening here, but on a general day-to-day basis, you're always just going to use autofill because it's just so much faster. The next thing which we're going to do is we're going to sign the transaction. So let's just do const signed, and then we're just going to do wallet.sign, and we just pass in the prepared transaction. And then the final thing to do is submit. So I'm going to bring it back into a const so that we can console log it. So I'm going to await client dot. And remember, I said there's a really cool method on the SDK we can use. It's essentially promise-based, so we can do submit and wait. And then we need to send in the signed transaction, and we have to send in the TX blob. And lastly, let's console log the result. Now, if I've done that right and I've not made a mistake and not done a typo, we should be able to run this code now. And what should happen is we should take 20 XRP from the account we activated on the testnet, and we should see the balance of that drop, and we should see the balance of the new account essentially go up by 20 because it's now going to get activated. So let's give it a go and see whether it works. Oh dear, the joys of doing things live. Missing a destination. Oh, huh. Yeah, it's frustrating, but case does matter. That looks more promising. So we had to wait about 3 seconds for that to actually come back. But now what we've got back effectively, if you look at the code, is we've got the result of the actual submission. So we can see a whole bunch of data here. We can see the ledger hash. We can see the index. We can see there's a whole bunch of meta that's really interesting to dig into as well. You can see all the JSON. You can see the delivered amounts. You see the fee that was paid. Fees are something, again, I touched on, very important. Every single transaction on the XRP ledger has a fee. So that has to be factored in as well. And what we should notice when we go and look at this now, which I'll switch screen, is we should see that we've got 100 XRP, we know, and we know we just sent 20 XRP. So you would think, well, there's going to be 80 XRP left in the other account. Well, you're going to find it's actually going to be 79.999988 or something along those lines. We know it's 12. So what we'll do is I will jump back here. Let's have a look. Let's get the R address. Actually, I can do that. Refresh it. I need to change my screen so you can see the Explorer now. And I need to show, oh, got too many windows open. That. Right. Hopefully you're all looking at the testnet. So interestingly, I did actually say it would show 79. It actually, you would take my word for it. It is 79.9998. It's just that this particular site actually just rounds it up. But the important thing that we want to do is we want to go and see whether our old account that wasn't activated, that we created, has now actually got some XRP. So what I'm going to do is take the destination address and fingers crossed. There we go. So we've gone from 100 XRP, we've got an account with 100 XRP. We've now created a new account in code. We've extracted the R address using the derive method. And then we've created a payment from the funded account to the unfunded account for 20 XRP. And what that has done now is fully activated the account on the XRPL. And that basically is how you would create an account on the testnet in code. So quickly recapping, you must always use the faucet in the first instance to get some XRP. There are ways in which you can do it using the SDK, and interestingly, if we've got enough time, I'll show you that in a moment. But the easiest thing is just to use the faucet and get yourself some XRP, and then you can go through the same steps and you can essentially create your account, send a payment to it, fund it. And interestingly enough, we've got the S address now of this account. So what we could do is we could do the whole thing again, switch around the code, put the S address for this as the main account, create a new account, put a new R address, and we could use 10 of this balance to activate another account. So let's stop sharing my screen. So hopefully you can all see me again. We're now at, we're eight by my time, it's 8:15. So we've got around about 45 minutes left. I think now is a great time to pause and see if there are any questions. And, you know, I've got another coding challenge to do, which is a bit more challenging, should we say, but essentially what it will do is it will enable us to go through lots of the things which we've learned over the last sort of like essentially what will have been the last 4 hours of the previous course and today, and put it all together and build a real app that actually does something interesting just for fun. So if we get time, we'll do that. But I think it's really important now that I give the opportunity for questions on what we've done. And feel free to ask questions about anything from the previous lecture as well, if you weren't in the audience last time and you've caught up with it. So yeah, I would ask for some help off my co-hosts to sort of like see if there are any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them all for you.
All right, you guys. Wow, that was incredible, wasn't it? You really got a true sneak peek into how these ledgers work. So if you learned something new, it could be anything, even one thing. I want you to put "I did" in the chat. If you learned something new, one thing today, and you learned a lot, I want to see "I did." Okay, John. Okay, Winnie. Tricia, Gerson, Paul, Cyril. See, Chris, they're learning. They're learning. I'm so excited. Yes, I'm so happy that you did. All right. So definitely, I'm so happy. You know, we are so happy at BLG that you are learning and you're growing in your knowledge of these ledgers. So, Chris, we do have some questions lined up. So if you have a question, I need you guys to raise your hand. Okay. Raise your hand if you have a question. We had some in the chat already that we're going to ask first, and then we're going to get to opening the mics. All right. So I see Paul lined up already. So 1 minute, Paul. But if you have a question as well, just raise your hand and we're going to get to you. So we have a question from Aussie Joe Francis, and he wants to know, since the current number of XRPL tokens is limited and finite, and some of this value gets to be depreciated or burnt every time a transaction is completed on Ledger, what happens when all the available XRPL tokens are burnt out on the network due to transaction activities?
That's a brilliant question. The reality is that the XRP ledger has been live now for over 10 years. In that time, it has burned a few 100 million XRP. There are over 100 billion available. So in order for that number to get anywhere close to running out, the number of transactions being done on the XRPL would have to increase like 10,000-fold, and it'd still take hundreds and hundreds of years to fully exhaust. So there is no danger that we would ever run out of XRP. But the important thing to note about that is that because of that mechanism, the XRP ledger is naturally deflationary. That's quite an interesting thing because currency usually inflate, and essentially every second that passes, there is less XRP in existence, and there will never be any more created. So essentially, it's a finite resource that's going to get smaller and smaller, and that means scarcity. And as a general rule of thumb, when something is scarce, it has value, and the less of it, the more it becomes worth. And I know we're only talking about drops being destroyed, so it's not like the XRP value goes up significantly as a result of it. But in principle, I'm thinking about it more theoretically. Every transaction that happens on the XRPL means more is destroyed, and we're always going down. But, you know, if we ever get to the point, and I say if, but if we ever got to the point where it was looking like that might happen, there would almost certainly have to be some kind of extra special network consensus of all the validators in order to how we would cope with that. But however, I cannot see that ever happening in my lifetime. I can't see it happening in my kids' lifetime. Not unless the XRP ledger literally is running at its like at a speed that's so huge and so big that it would go beyond all of my expectations, and even then it would still take many hundreds of years. So hopefully I've done justice to the question, because it was a really good one. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, it was really, really great. Like totally hot off the press. I had to make sure that was the first. It was one of the first ones that we received. Another one, it says here, it's from a developer, and they're asking, well, maybe a comment, but kind of one is your opinion on it. He says it would be nice for the XRP Ledger class to provide code snippets and be as practical as possible. It would be profound to share those slides or code repositories after the class. So you kind of wanted your opinion on sharing and providing code snippets and increased practicality. And then we'll get to the hands here.
Yeah, there are lots of resources for anybody that really wants to just jump straight in now. You've got the basics down now. The theory that you need to know to just have a go, you've got all of that now. So the next step is basically jump in and code something. Now, I'm going to share all of the repos today. All the code I've done through the course will be shared with everybody, so you can go and pull that from my repo. You have the option of going and looking at my Udemy course, which is going to give you more coding examples. You'll learn how to not just create accounts, you'll also learn how to delete them in code. You'll create essentially a wallet in React, and you'll have effectively a fully functional wallet that you can actually use. In addition to that, there's a bunch of stuff on YouTube. I can after the lecture, I can send a few links on if you want, and you could distribute that with your with all of the delegates on your course. There's a great site resource on the xrpledger.org, which will teach you a bunch of other things. I can provide another resource which will show you some examples how to create an NFT, how to look at pathing, a whole bunch of different bits and pieces. Those resources are actually provided by XRPL Commons. And the other thing is that the documentation of the XRP ledger is very mature now. It's a level above where it was when I started, because it was pretty poor when I got going a long time ago now. But today, the documentation is really good. So I would be quite surprised if you need anything other than inspiration, because once you know what you want to build, the xrpl.org documentation is very detailed and thorough. And there are developers like me that are more than happy to help if you get stuck. If you just follow me on Twitter and send me a DM, I'm more than happy to try and help you out. And then if you do decide to do some work with the XRPL, we can get you into the XRP Ledger Developer Discord, and then you can go and ask these types of questions to other developers, and they'll help you. And one day you can pass on your knowledge to somebody new and help them. And that's how we do it. The XRPL developer community is actually a really tight-knit community, and everybody's really friendly and happy to help. So I'll send some information after this, and you can distribute it out. And yeah, we'll help if we can.
Fantastic. All right, so we do have some more questions coming in from the chat, but I'm going to let Paul and Gibson do their questions. So guys, make sure your questions are short and to the point, because we have a lot of questions loaded up here, okay? So we're trying to get to as many of them as possible before Chris has to leave. So Paul, go right ahead.
Thanks, Chris. So my question is, earlier you mentioned that normally, because XRP does not have, smart contracts that they are inbuilt. So what that means is that if someone wanted, if a developer wanted a feature, they would have to get in touch with the code developers to make those changes. So how frequent does that happen? And then number two, you also mentioned about that currently XRP Ledger has one side chain, the Zahao. So do you have plans to have more side chains in the near future? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take the last one first because it's easy to answer. Zahao is the first sidechain. It's almost certainly not going to be the last. Zahao is essentially a fork of the XRPL with a WASM-based smart contract functionality. It's currently live, and the smart contracts are written in C, but they're currently working on a smart contract that's written in JavaScript, which is just going to explode the number of developers that can then go and write smart contracts on Zahoo. That's sort of like really getting some steam now. So if you're interested in smart contracts functionality specifically, you can check out Zahoo. In addition to that, there's a new sidechain that's actually was launched to testnet, I think, about a few days ago. We call it the EVM sidechain, the XRP Ledger EVM sidechain, because essentially what it is, it's an EVM compatible sidechain. So it uses XRP as the native token, but it just has its own virtual machine, and you can just literally just take your code, EVM code, lift and shift and drop it on. Like I say, it's not live yet. It is in testnet, but it's been in development for quite some time. So if you're coming from an EVM background, you do have the option. You do have the option.
Sorry, Chris. I think I have to mute everybody. All right, Chris, unmute yourself, please.
Okay, so you've got the option of effectively moving from like an EVM chain and using that code on the XRPL EVM. And then what you can do is they're going to have a bridge in place between the mainnet and the EVM sidechain. So you could actually be doing things with that bridge, which is some really interesting sort of like use cases where you could be moving value backwards and forwards, and then you could do stuff with in a smart contract on the side chain. And then when you want to get to sort of like payment finality, you could technically do either side, and then you could bridge the XRP off the EVM back over to the mainnet, where it could then be cashed out and into fiat or whatever you want to do. So it's two very different sort of like types of smart contract. Zahoo is something called hooks, where you essentially hook onto a transaction, whereas EVM does follow much closely the way in which you would do it in an Ethereum world. So that's the sidechain one answered. Now I've forgotten the first one. Remind me quickly, what was the first question again?
The first one was about how frequent the updates to the main. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, fine. So I sort of did touch on this on the first lecture. So the XRP Ledger is open source. It's permissionless. Anybody can build on it. Okay. So the biggest barrier, I suppose, to building on it from your perspective as a developer is the RippleD source code, which effectively is the XRP ledger. RippleD is essentially a daemon that runs the entire XRP ledger, and all of the nodes run that software. That software is written in C, which for many developers is not something that they really want to necessarily get involved in. But if you're a very senior developer, you like myself, you're probably not that scared of C. So it might be something you could even do yourself. So the first thing to do is if you have an idea and you can't do it on the native functionality, consider sidechain options, consider off-chain options, because not everything has to be done on chain. There are certain types of functionalities that you could do on your own backend potentially, and as long as the blockchain is not giving something that's going to be really important in terms of your business use case, it's fine to do things off chain. It's all about knowing when to use blockchain and when to just use a traditional Web 2 technology. And that in itself is sort of a skill, because many people over-engineer projects by trying to do everything on chain, when actually there's no value to have done it on chain. You could have just done that bit off chain and just settled on chain. So that's another thing you can do. But if you do ever come to the conclusion that actually you need to have a change to the XRP ledger, which is a position I've found myself in multiple times now, your choices are: you build your own.
Hey, guys, please keep your mics on mute if you're not asking a question. It's rude because we're really running on tight time, yeah? Thank you very much. Chris, back to you.
Okay, so you do it yourself, which is what I've done myself, or you can basically go to GitHub, there's a dedicated section for ideas, and you can post your idea of what you would like to see added to a GitHub idea, and you can start a conversation with some of the hardcore developers of the XRPL over your idea, and you'll get some pretty good feedback as to whether or not they think the idea is good, whether or not it's got legs, and whether or not anybody would be prepared to take it forward. And I personally have had many conversations with developers. They're very friendly, and if you've got a good idea, people want to hear it, and there's no reason why they won't support you in turning your idea into an XLS document, which essentially is a specification for the change. And then you go through the whole amendment process, which I've actually already discussed in the first lecture, so I won't go over that now. And then finally you go to a validator vote, and if the validators approve it, it'll go live. But the process is not quick. It takes many, many, many months, often up to a year or more, to actually go live. It all depends on the complexity of the change, what areas the protocol it touches, stuff like that. So it's not a simple answer I can give you as to, it's nuanced, but there's absolutely an open door for people to go and get started if they've got an idea, for sure.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, Paul, for your question. So we're going to move speedily on to Gessun. We're running out of time, so please, short and to the point, ask your question. Go right ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'm Getsun from Nairobi, Kenya. And my question is actually coming from an EVM developer background, where we heavily rely on concepts like gas fees, state changes, transaction, and composable smart contracts. On XRP, I understand the transaction model is feeless, and programmability is currently limited to the native features. For example, the escrows, the MMS, and probably the upcoming WASM-based smart contracts. So how should a developer like me, who's from an EVM Solidity background, can I reorient probably my development design and style to XRP in terms of state management, account abstraction, and probably I think this has been answered, cross-chain interoperability. Of course, you've mentioned about the side chain, but how does it directly affect my development style and probably mostly my setup? Thank you so much, Chris.
Okay, so the first rule of being a software engineer is use the right tool for the job. Okay, so the first thing you've got to ask yourself is the XRP Ledger the right place to build your project? Okay, if you're running up constantly against blocks, I really could do with a smart contract for this, I could do with a smart contract for that, then the XRP Ledger may not be the place for you to build. Doesn't mean you can't use it in your stack, just means you might architect the project in a different way. So always build on the technology platform that suits your use case. What you'll find with the XRPL is it actually does a lot more than what most people give it credit for. And the functionality that exists is rock solid and battle tested. Okay, so if you can do something off chain and integrate it, go that road would be what I would say. If you find yourself looking for a need for smart contracts, you could have a look at Zahao, but if you come from an EVM background, you're going to find it much easier to look at the EVM sidechain. That's another way, and then you'd be able to essentially write in exactly the kind of way that you're used to, but still benefit potentially from the XRP Ledger mainnet using the Axelar bridge. I don't think that I would advocate to anybody come to the XRPL, try and build every single thing possible on the XRPL. In the same way I would say don't try and build everything on Ethereum. All blockchains, they're not all created equally, and some blockchains are better for different things. Use the right tool for the job, and join the developer Discord and get involved in conversations, and you will have conversations on there with people that have come from an EVM background and now on the XRPL. And I know a couple that have actually have done that transition, and they get the best of both worlds now. They will move in between based on what their usage is.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gessun, for that question. So Maka, we see you, but we had some questions that came in before you. So hold tight, right? Just keep your hand there. right there. So we have another question, and I just want to get to the rest of Osijo's questions. So he has 3 more. So he wants to know, apart from the fees that are gotten for processing and validating transactions, what are the other incentives that exist for the usage of the XRP ledger? And I'll bundle that with his third question. And what is the average power footprint for running a validator node on the XRP ledger? So what are the other incentives outside of processing and validating transactions? What other incentives exist outside of that on the ledger? And what is the average power footprint for running a validator node on the XRP ledger?
Okay, the power one is pretty easy. It's tiny. You don't have to have, it's not like a proof of work blockchain where the machine is running max all the time. The XRPL is extremely power friendly. It's actually it's marketed as a sustainable blockchain because it's not burning massive amounts of electricity, because what it's doing is actually relatively simple. It's not doing any really complicated mathematical process like with Bitcoin. It's essentially just ordering transactions. It's not that complicated in terms of power and what the CPU is doing. So very sustainable, very low cost. But I don't actually have to hand the exact metrics of how many kilowatts per hour it uses. However, they are available. If you Google them, I think you'll find them. And if not, XRPL Commons will almost certainly be able to point you in a direction. And everybody should be following a number of people in this space. XRPL Commons is definitely one of them. You should also follow Ripple Dev, RippleX Dev as well on Twitter. And I'll include a bunch of recommended follows for you in the email I'll send you later. In terms of use cases, yeah, well, essentially gas fee is the obvious one. That's what it's there for. But it actually now is used in another pretty major way, which is essentially value transfer. So XRP is like the oil, and if you want to go from, say, euros to yen, the path between those two may not be that liquid. So what XRP Ledger has is a feature called pathing, and essentially what it will do is go, what's the best way for me to send 100 euros to yen? And what it will do is it will find all the possible routes it can take and pick the cheapest one for you. So it almost certainly ends up going through XRP because XRP is the most liquid asset on the network. So it'll probably go from something like euro into XRP and XRP into yen. Sometimes it could jump off and it might go through a USD stablecoin, or it might go off through some other token. But generally speaking, it will always end up passing through XRP because it's the most liquid. And that is a pretty major use case for it. Also, people just send payments with XRP. And there's a massive amount of trading volume in XRP as well. It's the 3rd largest cryptocurrency by market cap. In terms of incentives for running the network and running the validators, it doesn't work like a proof of stake or a proof of work network. There are no incentives for running validators. But I answered that question in a fair amount of detail in the first lecture. So I'd recommend skipping to that and listening to that.
Chris, just bear with me 1 second, please. I don't understand why people have the urge to leave their mics on when they have nothing to say. Okay, Chris, back to you, please.
Yeah, that's it. There's not much more I can really say on that, but go back and watch the first half because I did talk about that in detail.
All right, cool.
Fantastic. Okay, Maka, so you've been working those biceps, keeping that hand raised. You can go right ahead and give us your question. Maka, are you there? Going once. Going twice.
No, I'm here a little bit.
Oh,
I have a question. My question is about since keys on the ledger.
Maka.
How do you that some cases are sensitive and not? Because I know the first instance you tried to change it to uppercase. So how do you know that when building on the XRP ledger, you know that certain prompts needs in uppercase, lowercase? So and about testing of scalability on this. So how do you test of high transaction volumes on the testnet? Can you try volume test the scalability of RP ledger?
Yeah, I'm really sorry that I really couldn't hear you properly then. I really properly then. Phone, please. Thank you.
Mako, your connection was dropping in and out. So if you could type your question, even if Chris can get back to it at a later date, just
I'll
type
answer the first part. He put a question in the chat already, so I think I know what he's asking. I'll answer that question, and if he's got a follow-up, pop it in the chat. So he says, I'm trying to understand the case sensitivity on the XRP ledger, which parts are case sensitive and which aren't. Well, you know, it's one of those ones, there's a lot of different parts of the XRP ledger, so I can't possibly go through all of it now. But as you saw, our addresses are case sensitive. And when you're creating, as you saw the mistake I made, when I was creating the payment object, the actual field names are also case sensitive. So if you work on the basis that everything is case sensitive, then you're probably not going to have a problem. The documentation is king. The best thing to do is go to the documentation and see, because I can't possibly list all the examples of where it is and it isn't. There'd be too many things to touch on, but the documentation would absolutely be the place for you to go and find answers to all of that. Yeah, and that was it. That was the question. I can only see one in the chat. So if you have another question, drop it in the chat. I'll try and answer that for you.
Fantastic. And let's take Nino, because we do have one more position, very short to go. So Nino, go right ahead, and then I'll segue.
Hello. I'll turn on my video.
Yo,
right,
Nino, why are you sounding so exhausted?
I'm sorry?
Why are you sounding so exhausted, Nino? What's up, man?
Oh, yeah, it's a bad day.
No, Nino, you better start again, man. Don't bring that vibe.
You're right. Hold on. I'll try and, especially when I'm following Gabby, it's impossible.
So
All right.
So we're gonna bring Nino to ask a question, and then we'll find and segue. So go again, Nino.
So I'm not an expert on XRP in any means, or crypto in any means, but I know that Bitcoin's based off of SHA-256, and there's estimated crack times for how long it would be until that's cracked or that's broken, or the different attacks that could possibly render Bitcoin worthless. So I know that XRP has been around for a while as well. What encryption are you using to generate your key pairs? And have there been estimates done? Is there plans to get ahead of this inevitable break?
You talking about the
security wise
risk of quantum and all of that sort of stuff?
Yes, exactly.
Oh gosh. Well, you know what? Well, we use basically an elliptic curve for the signature. I personally don't buy into the whole everything's gonna fall apart in the next because of quantum computing. I actually believe that AI to me would be a bigger concern, that AI comes up with some mathematical method of breaking it before a quantum computer can just get it right. So, but I do know conversations have already happened at the sort of the highest levels, and there have been discussions about quantum. But to be honest, there doesn't seem to be any great rush really in any blockchain that I'm aware of that we need to solve this imminently. I think there's a lot of hype around it, and I think a lot of people are just blowing it up. And I think those blockchains that come out and say that they're quantum resistant. It's just a marketing thing, marketing ploy at the moment to try and gain a competitive advantage. I mean, I recognize the risks, I recognize the clear roadmap, but if it happens, in this decade, I'd be surprised. But I think that the actual path of this technology is followed closely by many of the very senior Ripple D engineers, and I think if it looks like there's going to be a big issue, there's that much money in all of this. Whatever resources are required to protect the network would almost certainly be deployed. So yeah, like I say, I don't worry about it too much, and it's probably it's not an area of the XRPL I get heavily involved in. I don't do all that much with the encryption side anyway, so I'm probably not the best person to answer it at a highly technical level. But I do know conversations have happened, and I'm not worried particularly about it. No, not this year, definitely.
Well, that was generally what I was getting at too, because you do have cryptos that are very heavily centered on their encryption, and it seems like open source like XRPL is a very good solution for that. You guys can change your protocols, you guys can modify and harden for the future. So other blockchains don't necessarily get to say that. So I think that the students, when they're considering which crypto they would like to pursue, that is another consideration. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, ladies and gentlemen of NLT, that brings us to the end of our Q&A session. So guys, before we segue, okay, let us put some claps. Look, drop some emoji.
Gabby,
Go ahead, Brian. That's Brian I'm hearing.
Had you exhausted everything?
No,
Yes.
I mean, I've got a whole coding thing I was going to show you, which was going to be like, whoa, but
No, it's okay. It's okay. Gabby, it's fine. I know you have to pop out.
Yeah.
Let Chris exhaust that, and then I will continue the moderation, and then Trisha will do her presentation.
Okay, great. Well, guys, as Brian said, yes, I do have to leave you and bid you adieu. But thank you so much for spending the afternoon with me. It has been a pleasure and an honor to moderate the program thus far. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Chris, you're absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the time to spend here so far with our students and NLT participants. And guys, thank you so much for spending the afternoon with me. And I'll be back, yes, later this week to spend some more time in this wonderful No Log Thing bootcamp. So have a great evening and see you guys soon.
Thanks, Gabby.
Right then, so what I'm going to do is, because I'm not going to have time to actually code all of this live, but luckily for me, I already did this afternoon. So I've already got it on a Git repo. So what I'll do is I'll share Git, and I'll just I'll share Git, and I'll just basically talk you through the code as opposed to having to actually type it, and then that will really speed it up. So let's just let me think about how the best way to do this is. I'm going to grab the code off of Git, paste it into VS Code, and then share my screen and talk you through it. So share screen. Right, can you see VS Code now?
Yeah.
Right, so we just move it onto this screen here. So where's my notes gone? This was going to be essentially the final module I was going to do, and try and put everything into practice that we've learned throughout the course so far, and just try and build something fun a real world app that basically just a bit of fun, but it does a lot of things which we've done. We're going to essentially reuse in a more meaningful way now. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an app that simulates printing money by generating a new XRPL wallet, funding it on the testnet, then transferring all the funds to a target account, doing it all programmatically. This is essentially, I took the inspiration from this from something XRPL Commons did. I'll take it slightly further. And I wrote the code this afternoon and tested it, and it worked great. So basically, we're going to be working with wallet creation, deriving addresses, reading balances, submitting transactions using the autofill, sign, submit, and wait. And then we're going to handle essentially the reserve amounts and the balance logic and all that kind of stuff. It's all on the testnet. The code, I'll give you the links to all of this at the end. The code is essentially going to be on my Git repo. You can go and run this. And because it's all on testnet, you can just go and run this yourself. You just need to get an initial account using the faucet the way I showed you, and you can go and have a go. So if you can see my screen, we're importing the SDK, and I've got two functions, and we're going to call main. We jump into the main function, and we're going to connect to the testnet. Then we've got a try catch block, which follows the similar pattern you've seen. We're going to connect. We've got our error, and we've got our disconnect. And then we're going to get the wallet from the seed, which we've done before. And we're going to extract the address, essentially the classic address, the R address, into address. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a constant called initial balance XRP. And then I'm going to use a method now called get XRP balance. And that's going to read the ledger. It's going to pull in the balance of the account, which we're deriving from here. And then I'm going to console log that. Then I'm going to call a function called print money, to which I'm going to pass in the client and the address. And that's going to basically going to do some funky stuff. And when that has run, because this is async await, it effectively an entire ledger will have closed, and we'll be now querying the next validated ledger. So I'm then going to effectively rerun this query and get the new balance, which should be based on the new account being funded 100 XRP. We should be able to basically see the balance go up. And it'll go up 99, not 100. I'll explain why in a moment. And then we'll output that to the screen. Okay. Now, if we jump into the important part, which is the print money function, what we're going to do is we're going to use a function called fund wallet. Now, this is part of the SDK. It's only available on the testnet, because you can't possibly create new XRP on the mainnet. So but on the testnet, you can basically create an account and have it auto-funded with 100 XRP. So we now have a wallet, which we've effectively renamed Donor Wallet. And then we're going to get the balance exactly the same we did in the previous function. And we're basically just going to pass it. And then we're going to, this is it's important, because you're going to have an account that's got 100 XRP, but you cannot send 100 XRP because you cannot spend the account reserve. Again, that's something I've talked about previously. So the account reserve today is 1. So the maximum number that you'd be able to send would be 99. So what we're going to do is we're going to work it out. So we're going to get something called server state. So basically, we're just going to do a request to the ledger for something called server state. And then inside server state, we're going to have some information which we're going to need. So what I'm doing here is I'm now trying to work out what the current base reserve is. The base reserve is how much XRP you need to have an activated account. And I'm wrapping it in XRP to drops, drops to XRP, because essentially when you get the value back, the value is denominated in drops. But what I actually want to do the calculation lower down is XRP. So I'm going to use the drops to XRP function to give me that. And I'm literally this would come back as a string. So I'm passing it so that this will work. And essentially inside server state, you've got a result object. Inside there, you've got a state object, and then a validated ledger object. And inside there, you've got a reserve base. which should be 1 million drops, which is 1 XRP. So reserve base XRP should now equal 1 XRP. Then we basically do a simple subtraction. So we're going to have a sendable XRP amount, which is derived from the balance of the account minus that base reserve, which would be 99. Then what we're going to do is we are going to basically, we have to convert it back to drops in order to be able to send it, and we have to make sure it's in 6 decimal places. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to get a new donor balance, which will be 99, and we'll be using that when we come to the amount. So now we're going to do a payment. We're going to send it from the account which we just created up here, and we're going to send it to our address that we passed in at the beginning. And then we're going to send the donor's available amount, which is going to be 99. And then we follow the same pattern as before, where we're going to prepare the transaction with autofill. We're going to sign it, and then we're going to submit it, and we're going to wait for a result. And when we get that result back, we'll console log the transaction result. What we're looking for is test success, which again I talked about in the previous lecture. All transactions have a response code, and we want to see test success. That lets us know it was successful. And so when we drop back in here, we query it, and we should see the balance will now adjust and console log out the new balance. So what I'm expecting to see is going to be an initial balance, then test success, and then an increase of 99. So because I did this afternoon, I did a couple of tests with it. So I hope this is going to work. We'll see. So an initial balance of 298. It does take a full ledger to actually run, he says. Here we go. So then we see that the function resulted in test success, and then we've now got a new balance of 397, and we can run that again, and we can print ourselves some more money. So if you had a let's just say you were going to, I don't know, you wanted to do some kind of project where you were going to need a high balance of XRP for something, then you could actually use this to recursively just essentially harvest a whole bunch of XRP and create yourself one account with, say, 10,000 in if you wanted to. And so anybody that wants to view this code, I'll give you all the links in a moment. But as a challenge to anybody that wants a challenge, there's 1 XRP now sitting in an account unused. And we don't back up or use the seed phrase anywhere in this code. So it's essentially lost, right? The XRPL documentation is really good. Go there, find the delete account function. When you delete an account, you can set a destination for the balance of the account to go to. Add in an additional step inside print money, delete the account after you've transferred the 99 XRP, and you will be able to send another 800,000 drops via the account delete function to the destination account. It's a challenge for anybody that's up for it. I decided not to do it because it'll be something interesting to challenge you all to do. It's not difficult. It's probably only about like 4 or 5 lines of code, but be great if a few of you have a go and see how you get on. And that's it. I'm just going to jump back to the slides because I wanted to share the links with you to basically I'll stop sharing. I want to share the links to the, where's it gone?
I just wanted to say that I think it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things I teach at work is there's 3 things that you have to pay attention. There's an input to everything. There's the processes that run it, and then you have to take care of it and clean up after the fact. So the fact that you said to go back and actually delete the account, that's one of my pet peeves, is no one ever thinks about cleaning up after themselves. They just leave.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the test net, there's actually no harm in leaving it. However, you really should you should absolutely clean up the accounts if you're not going to use them. Absolutely. And then you're effectively reducing load on the ledger, which is kind of important. I don't know why that's not showing me. That's not actually showing me the screen.
This was a really good class. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it. And
It definitely demystifies XRPL quite a bit, and it answered some questions. I do appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
I'm going to take a flyer that it's this one. Let's see. Yes, it is. Finally found it. Okay, so let's jump to the next slide. Okay, so there you go. Those are your GitHub repos. So they're all on my repo. So if you go to GitHub/XRPL365, you'll find a bunch of them. There are a couple of other bits of code on there as well, which you might find interesting. But those are the ones which we've done in these series of lectures. And all that's really left for me to do is thank you all for listening to me for almost 4 hours of your time. Please do follow me on Twitter, or X as it is now. If you wanted to get in contact with me, that is absolutely the best way to do it. There's also a very vibrant XRP community out there, and X is a great place to go and learn, ask questions, and just learn more about the XRPL in general. My Udemy course, I've extended the discount for anybody that wants to get it. This will be the last opportunity. It's live for 4 more days. It's at a massive discount price. It can't go any lower. The way to get it is all on the screen. Note the code has changed. I can't use the same code twice, so I've just called it April best price. Use that. The other thing is I just want to plug the XRP Ledger Apex event, which is in June. So it's in Singapore, and basically it's a developer conference stroke community stroke celebration of the XRPL. It's really popular, and if you're interested in the XRPL and you can make it to that, it is a brilliant place to go and learn. There's lectures of 50, 60 different types of like practical lecture. They have all sorts of different kinds of workshop, and you'll see and meet some of the real movers and shakers. David Schwartz is almost always at these events. You know, some of the real top developers in the space are there. So get over to Apex if you can. It's a really great place to go and experience everything about the XRPL. And lastly, bookmark xrpl.org and xrpl-commons.org. Those are 2 websites where you'll find some great resources about the XRPL. It's a good place to start your journey. And I'll put together an email for Brian later that will just give a few more resources that you can go to, and I'm sure he'll share all that with you. So yeah, thank you very much for
Thank you, Chris.
the time.
Do you want to unpin your slides, please?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chris. Guys, you just want to drop some claps or fire emojis for Chris. I'll be really grateful for that. For those who want to do the Udemy course, don't worry about that. We are going to support the ones who aren't able to pay the floor price that Chris is offering right now. So we're also in discussions with XRPL Commons to provide you with some sort of grant to get some of those courses by Chris. Okay, so Chris, we are incredibly grateful. So guys, there's something Chris said. The XRP ledger rather, is Chris, is it the 3rd biggest according to the market cap?
3rd or 4th, it depends on the price. I mean, I think like 3 days ago it was 3, today it's 4.
Yeah. So in reiterating and emphasizing that point, guys, essentially this is no small thing. Okay, so for XRPL Commons to be here dedicating their time and all that, it's no small thing. So Chris, we are really grateful, and we hope to see you in our real life events, which are actually coming up. We're still debating between Africa and the Caribbean. So I think you see how the World Cup does it. We might end up doing a vote in-house with the board to decide where we actually are going to be. And I know Paul Makolaka and the Kenyan crew are really lobbying for the event to be in Africa. So yeah, Chris, grateful for your time. And if anybody has any final question for Chris before he pops out, please. Oh, Kenya, Nairobi, I see you all representing. Yeah, Chris, if you haven't been to Kenya, Kenya is a fantastic country and we'll take good care of you. So I'll say the way for the Caribbean as well because, you know, I love my Caribbean people as well. So there's one question. Oh, Nino has a question.
I'll bring the energy this time. No, for XRPL Commons, I remember that it was either you or one of your compatriots that was speaking mentioned that you have topics that you guys get after for each of your cohorts. What is the next topic that you guys are going to be pursuing? And if you know, what is the next one after that?
Well, I don't know whether Cyril, who is on the call, is actually Cyril from Commons or not. If it is Cyril from Commons, he'd probably be better off answering that.
Yeah, it's not Cyril from Commons. I spoke to Cyril from Commons today, and we are literally Nino. Sorry, we didn't have a meeting, you and I, before the class. I should have updated you on that. So essentially, and this goes back to the feedback form. So, guys, we need you, for those who haven't, we need you to populate that feedback form because XRPL Commons and us, we're trying to see the sort of content or community support that we are going to provide you. And in terms of also the competition, because the aquarium residency, I got a clarification on numbers. It only takes 12 people from all over the world. So, and we have like a golden ticket to the competition. Okay. So there are people who won't even get to the competition stage. So you get a golden ticket to the competition pool, but you're not guaranteed entry because it's terribly competitive. Okay.
Yeah.
And he said they are looking for uniqueness, unique idea, unique thing. Or if there's something existing, you need to distinguish how yours is sort of unique as compared to the other thing. All right. So I've been talking to Cyril and Aurelien will also be here. I hope I've pronounced his name correctly. He's going to be here on graduation day. And he and Cyril are the co-directors of the aquarium residency. So you get all the support you need. And Vera, she's also following closely on the feedback form. Actually, the form is going straight to Vera's desk. So I need you guys to really take this thing seriously because so many organizations you're working with are really putting so much time and resources into this. So there's no shepherding or herding or whatever that, you know, Palesa has been doing a brilliant job. Palesa, Favor, and Trisha on the group, they're superstars. They keep reminding guys, myself as well, so let me big up myself. But we have to stop reminding you all the time. This world of entrepreneurship is about initiative and consistency. So if there's nothing else, we're going to allow Chris to go. And then Trisha, who happens to be our ambassador from Barbados, and she was in the previous cohort, has something to share with y'all. So Trisha Millington, I'm really grateful to have you here. And Chris, big up yourself. Talk to you soon. Catch up soon, yeah?
Thank you.
All right, cool.
Thank you, Chris.
Hi, good afternoon, guys. Just to reiterate, and I have to thank Chris for demystifying what a lot of people did not understand about XPR. It's not a presentation, but a commentary of sorts. Really just trying to encourage you not to be discouraged about not being able to code. Some of us are still new to coding. Chris, from what I observe, has been using GitHub. GitHub actually does give guidance. It actually helps even with correcting errors when you are doing coding. So AI is your friend. You can go out there, you can use some of the AI prompts to actually teach you how to code. And the program here at Blockchain Lex and Chris and Nino and some of the others are willing to give you that guidance. So you're not being thrown in the deep end. They're here to give you guidance. They're here to support you. Brian would have said earlier that they're even willing to sponsor you to do the Udemy course so that you have a greater chance. And Web3 is about leveling the playing field. And what I've observed about the XPR ledger is that it's a lot easier even than other aspects of blockchain in that it's decentralized. So you still have a greater level of ownership, and that's what Web3 is all about. So I'm really encouraging everyone to stay encouraged, stay focused. We're like 2 days away from the end. You got this.
Yo, big up yourself, Trisha. Literally, it's 2 days. It feels like we just started yesterday. So, Palesa,
Yeah.
you're next.
I'm next. What
Yeah,
did I do?
we have to hear from the director of comms to hear what's popping. We have 2 days to go. What you have to say to the cohort, and what should we expect in the next 2 days? Yeah, Jedidah, I think we said, can we get Pales's 1 second? There's a question here. Can we get
Okay.
resources on blockchain development, specifically comparing XRPL and Bitcoin? The focus should be on their terms, particularly in terms of development. Hey, Jedidah, I'm gonna answer you this, right? You can't be spoon-fed everything. Sometimes you have to take initiative. Right now, there's ChatGPT, there's Perplexity, there's plenty different AIs out there. You literally just pop this question you've typed in there, and it's going to give you a head-to-head approach. Like in this industry, you have to take initiative. Yesterday, Kish said this as well. You have to take initiative. Most of us here, our starting point was the Bitcoin white paper. And I guess it's 12 pages or something. It's a really short document.
I don't even think it's 12 pages.
Not even 12 pages. It's a really
I
short
think it's
document.
longer than 12.
Oh, it's longer than 12.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
a
It was
really
a short read.
Yeah, so like all my knowledge of everything started from the Bitcoin white paper. In that group chat, I've put the Bitcoin white paper, I've put a simplified version of the Bitcoin white paper, and I've put the Ethereum white paper and a simplified version of the white paper. Okay? So right now, it's like when kids are learning to walk or cycling, you have to remove the support. You have 2 days to go. Graduation is on Monday for those who are going to graduate. Because if you're not doing what Palesa is asking you all to do, and Han and Nino are the ones looking at the assessments, then potentially there's no graduation for you. So anyway, Palesa, let me hand over to you.
All right, thank you, Brian. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Just to add on what you just said, Brian, I also started with the white paper at the beginning of the cohort, and it's crazy enough that I didn't even know much about cybersecurity at that time. I didn't know much about artificial intelligence at that time. I was just a lawyer with just my LLB, So from there, I graduated, right? And then I started taking short courses to supplement the knowledge that I got from this cohort. You understand? I got my certificate in cybersecurity now. I got and took some of the courses, about 6 courses, which were actually talking about AI and rule of law because I get it. My actually, did I just say I get it? Cool. Anyway, my expertise is around like law. So I supplemented this knowledge with other short courses. You get that? So this is more like Brian is saying, you're not supposed to be so dependent on us, dependent for everything on us. You have to go out there and do other things for yourself, right? This is more like a foundation, and then you take it from there. All I can just say is that no loan team for me actually changed my career because I was just a legal consultant. If I've shared this before, I don't think I've shared this before. I've actually saved it for today. I was just a legal consultant and I didn't know which area of law I wanted to pursue. You understand? So the No Loan Team Bootcamp gave me, it actually opened my eyes to opportunities like being a technology lawyer. That's where it actually opened my eyes and then I took it from there. Okay. So it's up to you now. This is a foundation for you and you get so many experts. You can follow them, ask mentorship. Okay. But now going back to the assessment, I'm really, really proud of you guys. I'm really, really proud of you guys. I've seen a lot of you have started sharing. That's the goal, knowledge sharing, right? We're building a community of people who are not selfish, people who know how to share the knowledge, okay? So I've seen a lot of you have started posting and I encourage you to keep on posting. Remember, I have a list. I have a list, I have a list.
Listen, guys, on a lighter note, yeah, there's actually a list because Palesa and Nino are doing the assessment handling, but we're also going to be looking for regional ambassadors because like there's so much work. We want to change the world one person at a time. So like for Nairobi, we want to come and represent in Nairobi. For Kisumu, Nakuru, Mombasa, like all those places, like even as far as Busia or, like all those cities in Kenya. Yo, Marcela Barasa in Bungoma, you know what I mean? Hey, Marcella, my village is in Busia. My rural village is in Busia. So you and I are kind of neighbors, you know what I mean? So, and there's so many brilliant youth in Kenya all over, So, like, take this seriously because we are going to reach out to the best performers. You don't have to win the Ideathon, but you just have to show that, you have this impetus to do something. And correct me if I'm wrong, Palesa, did you win the Ideathon?
No, I
You
did
didn't win the
not.
Ideathon, right?
No.
Yeah, and
And the
see,
three winners,
yeah,
I don't know what happened to them. They stopped coming back to me.
yeah. So Palesa
Yeah.
didn't even win, but she literally is holding it down more than people who won. So don't focus on the 300 quid or the whatever. Like life goes beyond that. Okay. So even our people in Nigeria, we have Favor who's always representing Nigeria. I know Maka Yusuf is always there. I know Lawal is always there. Like literally Ruth Adesina, there's always people who are always holding it down for us to the point that I know their names. There's Al Muhammad Al Jabbar or something. There's always those people, like they didn't even have to take part in this course again. They finished, they got their certificates, like others got even outstanding certificates, okay? Like literally they're so outstanding, but they are still with us, okay? And we really want to help all of you to now, for those who can get into the residency, we really want to help you because I know Nino always tells me, like, Nino is so committed to this, him and Evan, they're so committed to this. They're like, yo, Brian, we are doing the next boot camp, but what about our other people? So I keep telling Nino, yo, hold up. We got the other people. We are getting the networks. We're getting the partnerships. Like Hashgraph, Hedera, Solana. Now XRPL. Like we are really getting people, the devs and all. So you don't have to know how to code for your idea to come to life. Chris has said that. So we got you. For real, we got you. So Nino, Evan, you want to talk about the Ideathon again? Because there's been questions about the Ideathon, and I think you just need to clarify what's going on.
I sent you, Brian, I just sent you the template that we used last time, and I'll pull that up. Oh, this is not it.
Your co-host, Nino, so you can share it if you want to.
I am actually. I just realized I could do that, so I'm gonna pull it up in my sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So this I sent it out to you though, because I don't have the email list of everybody that joined the I don't have a list of everyone that registered for this.
Nino, while you look for that, let me say something real quick. And this applies to everybody because I understand the countries we come from. Yeah. So during the last cohort, many people were asking for what can blockchain do in terms of elections and real estate? Because those are some of the really pertinent issues in our countries. So like in Kenya, now let me use the Kenyan example. If you want to change the system from Kasongo and all dumb people who keep messing you about, this is your chance. Technology is the equalizer. It's going to, squeeze out the old guard. So by taking this and understanding, you literally change the world a day at a time, especially with things like Web3. The whole thing was taking back control of your privacy and creating trustless ecosystems. So you can do this, but it can only happen once you take it so seriously and you forge those communities, the dev communities or non-dev communities amongst yourselves and rise up. And for me, I'm really passionate about this because I come from Kenya and I understand the shit that people go through. I haven't been there in a long time, but I love Kenya. I'm a homeboy. You know what I mean? Yesterday, my uncle Frencho was there talking to y'all. We really want to be serious about things. So let's do this. Let's be serious with things. Yeah. So, Nino, Evan, back to you.
Yep. I'm gonna pull it up. Last time I talked too much. I feel like I have to let Evan talk.
Yeah, well, I think maybe I'm not into the details of it all. I'm kind of thinking, more from the sense of for the ideathon, how, what your perspective for your ideas should be. And I think number one, it's about creating value, right? Creating value for others. And I feel like Africa has so much potential there. So if you have an idea that can help other people prosper and grow and solve real critical issues in society, that's what you should be putting forward. It's a challenge out there to kind of find a business that can be replicatable, but I think because of the amount of opportunities in Africa, even if your market is small, there's, bigger markets maybe not that far away that you can replicate it in, right? So you can build in a small market, you can test it in a small market, and then you can say, okay, well, this works in my village in, Kenya. How, maybe we can scale it to work at a higher level in the entire nation of, Nigeria. So don't just think about, your place, but also all of Africa, right? And we really want to build these businesses and build that sort of next generation of business in Africa. Does that kind of resonate with you guys?
Yeah, Evan, that's cool. And before I forget, for those who are in the WhatsApp group right now, I'm going to forward you something that Cyril sent, okay, as part of our discussions today. And it's literally what Nino and Keish and Frencho and Evan have been saying. So if you look at the group right now, it's going to give you an idea of what really is being looked for. So if anybody has their phones right now, I've forwarded something. Nino, if you want to read it out. Actually, no, Nino, you don't read it out. Let a student who's in the group right now read it out for us. Anyone, if you got confidence, unmute yourself and read what it's saying right now.
I will read it.
Okay, Paul. Who's
Hi,
reading?
guys.
Who's reading?
David.
Can I read it?
Okay, David, whoever came up the first, just read it, please.
Came up the first.
Okay.
I came up the first. I'm reading it.
Okay, read it. Who's reading then? Read.
John.
Okay, John, read it.
Okay. Often in application, people don't say much what they want to build, or they are not building something innovative.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it already exists or it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is what we are trying to hammer down. Like when you're doing it, do something that is gonna sail you through this criteria. And this is from Cyril. Cyril is the CEO of the residency. Okay? So we're not here to just, excuse my language, we're not here to bullshit you. We're literally here to help you help yourselves and help the world at large. Nino.
Yeah, no, it's good. All right, so this is a template that everyone is going to get. Do not feel obligated to actually fill out this PDF. Last cohort, a lot of people did. I believe one of the winners actually did. So it's, again, this is how we're going to be grading you. I don't care how you get these answers to me. I have the ability to understand what you're trying to convey. However, the clarity and the quality of your presentation directly reflects how you're going to run your business or run your idea. So if you're sending me something that doesn't really make sense or isn't really put well together, I'm going to think that you're going to do the same thing with your idea. But I'll start from the top. So the originality of your idea, I think we've hammered it in by now. Don't submit something that you need government approval to get. You're not going to change how voting happens in your country or the healthcare in your country. Things that take a lot of bureaucratic actions are not going to be changed. Not to say that they can't be, but for the ideathon, probably not what you should start with. The feasibility and scalability of the project. Can it go on? Will it be able to continue? Is it an idea that actually makes sense? 3, your potential impact on your community. So if you send me something and you're like, hey, I can build a solution for 50 people that I know in this small group that I have, and like it has the potential to actually expand beyond these 50 people, but I want to build it for these 50 people, and it's really small and simple and easy to build. That is some potential impact in your community. So that will play into how we grade and how we rate your packages. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll on. And these are the things that I said yesterday. Describe the problem you're trying to solve. Don't start with the solution. Start with the problem. Clearly define the problem. And then you can move on to how to solve it. But if you don't have a very specific problem you're trying to solve, what ends up happening is you try and say, oh, and we can do this, and we can solve this, and we can solve this, and we can, your elevator pitch gets muddy, it gets mixed, and it's not clear. So you want to say, I want to, do this one specific thing, because this problem, I want to address this one specific problem. That's what you have to define before you can move on to how you solve that problem. I wish I had a better example right now. So describe how you plan to apply blockchain technology to solve the problem. This is difficult right now because we've heard a lot from XRPL, and they are just one of the blockchains, right? So there are other blockchains that have different different functionalities, different utilities. So in this case, I think for this bootcamp right now, you are, I shouldn't say limited to XRPL, but the scope of your ability to identify solutions is not as experienced as Evan, who eats, breathes, and lives blockchain. So this is probably the least important part, honestly, of this whole product. Because if you come back up here, if you define your problem, chances are Evan or Brian or I will be able to see, oh wow, no, you need to be on this blockchain. It's like the chances of us who've been around it for a long time, who know the different blockchains and know the nuances and know the technology and the utility, that you can lean on us on a little bit here. So I wouldn't worry too much about how you will apply blockchain, but it is something that prove to me you know what you're talking about. Prove to me that you know that there are utility chains, that you know that crypto is not a get-rich scheme, that there's a technology behind it that can solve problems. That's what this question is really asking. You're going to create a SMART goal. What exactly do you want to achieve? How are you going to track your project progress? Is the goal realistic? How does it, so if you come to me and you've never developed anything in your life, you're not a developer, and you're saying, I want to reach 100,000 people with this product in 3 months. No, that's not going to happen. The chances of you even being able to develop the product, a prototype in that time, unrealistic. 3 months is so fast. You all have lives, you probably have families, you're probably students, you're probably professionals. This is going to be something you do on the side. Keep that in mind when you're setting these goals. Because if you set an unrealistic goal, you're just shooting yourself in the foot, and you're going to take yourself out of the race before you even started. Set a realistic goal. You know, by next year, I want 10 customers. That is a realistic goal. That means you have a prototype. That means you have a developer, you have a network, you have a way of marketing to people. Like, that's realistic. It's not the most optimistic goal. I wouldn't aim for 10 within a year, but that's not a bad goal. And if it's realistic and it makes sense, write it down. Relevant. If you have nothing to do with real estate, don't bring a real estate product to us or an idea. If you're not in healthcare, don't bring a healthcare idea. If you're not a car salesman, don't bring how to sell more cars. So it needs to be not only something that solves your problem, but it needs to be something that you actually have the power to solve that problem, or you have a goal for getting after it. Time bound. Again, we just explained that, so you're good. What solutions already exist? This goes back to what Brian just posted in the No Long Ting. If you are trying to create an application a way of sending money across borders, I can give you a list of 10 off the top of my head right now that are already built, cheap, well established, secure. That's not something that we need. This is your chance for you to not only you have a problem and you found a solution, but you have a problem and, oh wow, there really aren't any solutions out there. This is your chance to find and discover if there's competition, if there's people doing it, are there similar products, can you improve on those products? This will actually help you build out your submission too. Because let's say you want to move money in your small community. Well, I can use this other solution, but there's really this hang up because of it. It's like, oh, if we use this blockchain, we can get past that problem. We can provide a better solution. So it'll help you identify what the weaknesses that already exist in the current systems, and then you can exploit those weaknesses to build a better solution. Get that adaptability, make people want to actually use your product. Explain why your solution is better than the existing ones. We just talked about it. Where does the money come from? So you're not going to do this as a charity. Ideally, you are going to come up with an idea that solves a problem in your community. You're going to be able to scale it out. You're going to affect the world, and it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. And if this idea of yours does not have a way of generating income, it's going to become so large it'll kill itself. So you have to have a way that as you are growing, as your product is being adopted, it is able to continue to grow. It's not going to become a burden to itself. And also, as the bigger you get, the more money you need to operate. So if you have a website can handle probably 100 people normally. As soon as you start getting 100,000 people on your website, things start slowing down. You need servers to back that up. You need more money to support that. So as you get larger, the more money you need actually gets larger. That is something to continue to consider as well. I'm not expecting you to go that far in this Ideathon submission, but at least have a base idea, a business plan, a business model that makes sense logically. Now, explain what support and resources you need from us. This was a hard, hurdle for the first Ideathon submissions, because we would have really good submission, really good team, decent idea, slightly better than the stuff that exists, but then they would come to us and be like, I want $100,000. And be like, I'm not just gonna trust, 6 people that I've known for 2 weeks with $100,000 for a solution that kind of already exists, and can't really promise me a return on investment. It's just, don't bring me, I want money. That's not the right answer. Normally it's, I need someone who can do a back end and a front end development, or I need somebody who can code in C++. I need someone who's already in the XRP-L area network. I need to connect to a Solana developer. So those are achievable goals. Not achievable goals. Those are support and resources that we can provide and trust you with them. So I would just say that the companies or the submissions that the last cohort, they actually had a shot. If they had been more realistic with exactly what they needed and been more autonomous, more, thoughtful with their needs, they probably would actually still be teams today with products in the world. And then this is the most important part, the elevator pitch. Everything we just discussed, condense it down to a couple paragraphs. You've got 30 seconds to explain to me what the problem is, how you want to solve it, what you need, why I should help, and why I should choose you. This is where you focus in on, it's like, hey, I'm a farmer and I have this solution for farmers in my community. I'm a member of a group and there's 5,000 of us and we would all benefit from this. Like, yeah, you bet I'm gonna get behind you. So that's, you need to sell me. There's a problem, you know how to get after it. You are the person to get after it. And you need something very specific from me. Those are the ones that are gonna win. But if you detailed out 1 through 7 are super explained and you really thought about it, but then your elevator pitch falls flat. A lot of times we have, like last cohort, we had hundreds of submissions, hundreds and hundreds of submissions. And it was me just reading through a lot of very similar solutions, so similar problems, similar issues, not super unique. A lot of times I would read it, notice that it's the same thing by about question 2 or 3, scroll down to 8, and then read if there was anything different. So I wouldn't even read, 3 through 6. If it was the same idea, I just read 20 times because I knew it would be the same answer. And sometimes I would go to the elevator pitch and be like, no, I need to go back and actually give this one a fair shot. So make sure that you're giving yourself a good elevator pitch. All of this is what matters. You're going to get invited to speak at a conference, And Brian and I are going to trust you to go in front of hundreds of people and explain what your product is. This is what we want. You're going to have a few minutes to talk, and you're probably going to have hundreds of potential customers right there. And if you can't explain or articulate your problem and your idea and your solution to these people in just that short amount of time, it shows that you really haven't given enough thought. You really haven't invested yourself into your idea.
Nino, could
Yes,
I add
sir.
something?
Yeah.
I just want to, I like doing this. I like benchmarking the room. First of all, Chukwuka, that question, we're going to answer it in a different forum in the next class, because right now it's been passed by events. Right now we're talking about the idea thing, and it's concerning that you're not getting the concept of tokenization, and we've been discussing it like every day for the past few days. So we'll get back to that. Now, I just want to clarify that there's some people here, Nino, who already are entrepreneurs, and I've received some ideas that are solid ideas. Like some of them just need seed capital. Yeah, Tabitha, that's what I'm getting to. That's literally what I'm getting to. So some ideas are really good. So some ideas are going to be like, we'll try to prepare you for XRPL or for any other VC funding. So you need to think about this thing. It's not an assessment for us, okay? This is not homework. We're not your teachers. This is life thing, yeah? So if you think you're doing it for Palesa because she's looking at how many people are posting on LinkedIn or how many people have done the assignment, then you failed already, because we're doing it for life. Someone like Evan and Nino are always talking to VCs, venture capitalists, and Kish is actually a venture capitalist. He runs something called Foundation Ventures Group, and they literally invest in solid ideas. So we have the network of people who can support you. But for you to get to that level of being supported, we have to see it at this stage whether it meets the criteria. Some of you have things that have already surpassed that criteria. So those are things that we're going to forward into the hackathon and into the startup pitch competition. So some of you, like essentially, there's different people here at different stages, but we are here for everybody. Okay? But for you to get to that electric dream stage, which is our stage 3, like we also need to know that we're investing our time and resources and efforts and everything in a company that's going, in a startup that's going to be something. Okay? So this is not an assessment. If you're thinking that this is a boot camp, that you come and you do your assessment and you get a certificate, this is not for you. We are here to help people in real life to do real things. That's what we're doing. And as founders, we also want like to support companies that we're going to see. We're looking for the next unicorn potentially, like the next big thing. So if you watch Shark Tank, or those who watch BBC and Dragon's Den or Apprentice or all those things, like what Nino is stating is so simple. When you watch Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful or whoever, Mark Cuban goes like, what's the idea? Why is it unique? What are your sales? How are you looking to scale? And well, what's your SWOT analysis, competitors and all those, okay? It's basically the same thing. So here we're helping you, we're helping those who haven't reached that level yet. But I know there's some of you who've crossed that level already. So if you wanna unmic yourself and we finish in the next 6 minutes, I'll be happy. We'd wanna hear from some of the students. It doesn't matter what stage you're at, this is a safe space. Don't say the idea you have, give a gist, okay? And just say, what you was expecting. If you was expecting cash, it comes from venture capitalists. But we can provide resources, which is almost getting you there, but you not handling the cash. You understand? So you're still fueling your agenda, but you're not, it's just like someone giving you a credit card, tap, 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 and go, you know what I mean? But you're just not having it in your bank account. So don't focus on one thing. So we have like 5 minutes to go, and then we call it a long, long stop. If anybody wants to say something, you have it. But if there's nothing to say, we can also just wrap it up now, and we meet tomorrow. Tomorrow is a fantastic session. We have some crazy guys. We have Matt Hogan from the Secret Service. Yo, we have plenty guys coming tomorrow to kill it. So
I did just want to say, I sent you the template, Brian. If you can get that to Palesa or whoever has the list of emails, because I don't have the list of registrations or the registries, the students or the people.
Yeah. No worries. I'm gonna do that. I guess nobody wants to say anything. So let's just call it a night. Link up tomorrow.